Daf Yomi is so 157. We're going to start on the bottom of 156b with the Mishnah. We had seen so far two opinions about Shchimera, and the opinion of the majority of our chapter, which was that a person who's sick can give away all of his assets orally, even without a kinyan, and if he recovers, he can reverse it. Whereas Rebbe Lazar argued with that and said, no, he has to do a regular kinyan and it's not reversible. He didn't do any special dispensation for a sick person. Now we say Rabbi Eliezer, a third position. Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah says on the bottom of 156b, he says, B'Shabbos Tvarav Kayam, and he said, on Shabbos a kinyan can work of a shchimera because you can't write on Shabbos. But during the week, since you can write, you should you can't do a shchimera gift. You have to do a regular gift. Comes along, Rabbi Yeshua says, B'Shabbos Amru and Kal V'chomer B'chol. He said, on Shabbos they allowed you to do it when, and for sure during the week. Since during the week you anyways could do a regular kinyan by writing, then for sure you're allowed to do a shchimera gift. But on Shabbos it's the bigger chiddush, because on Shabbos you're typically speaking can't do a kinyan. So on Shabbos they allowed you to do it. It's a bigger chiddush. It wasn't even under the rubric. And so too we say Zachon Katan vein Zachon Gadol. So too we say you can acquire something for a minor. Zachon Katan vein Zachon Gadol. Rabbi Eliezer says you could acquire something for a minor because the minor can't acquire something on his own, but you can't acquire something for an adult. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua says Lakatan Amru and Kal V'chomer Gadol. He says for a minor they allowed you to acquire something, and for sure for an adult you can acquire it. So it's the same concept, that if there's another option, Rabbi Eliezer doesn't allow you to do it. But with Rabbi Yeshua says if you could do it for the option that there's no other option, then for sure you could do it for the option or there is another option. And this relates to the concept is kol haroy labila ein bila me'akeves bo, that if you're able, that if you don't have to mix the flour and the oil to make a carbon mimcha, but it has to be capable of being mixed. So the Gemara says our version of the Mishnah, Masnisim Mani, our version of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara is going to cite a brayso which has a different version of the Mishnah. The Tanya Rameir Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Behold Dvarav Kayamim. According to this other version of the brayso, that Rabbi Eliezer says during the week you can do a kinyan, you can do a shchimera gift without a kinyan. Because during the week you can write, so therefore you don't even need the kinyan of a little bit Shabbos. But on Shabbos you can't do the shchimera gift, whereas Rabbi Yeshua says B'chol Amru V'Kal V'chomer Shabbos. So just to reverse the opinions. And top of 157a, Kayotze Bo Zachon Gadol Vein Zachon Katan, the Rabbi Eliezer. And so too we say that you can acquire for an adult, but not the minor. That's position of Rabbi Eliezer, as Rabbi Yeshua says B'Gadol Amru Kal V'chomer Katan. This is the opposite of what we had said, and Rabbi Yehuda says our version. Rabbi Eliezer Omer B'Shabbos Dvarav Kayamin. Rabbi Yeshua says B'Shabbos Amar Kal V'chomer B'chol Kayotz B'Zachon Katan Vein Zachon Gadol. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua Amar Katan Amar Kal V'chomer Gadol. So basically, our version of the Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda's teaching of the Mishnah, not Rabbi Meir's. So now we come to the next Mishnah. Mishnah says Nafal Abayis Alav Aviv. So there's two people in the house. There's Yaakov, who's the father, and Ruvain, who's the son. And Rahman al the house collapses and it falls on both of them. We don't know who died first. They're both dead, but we don't know who died first. Or fell on Ruvain, and the people are bequeathing to Ruvain. So it fell on Yaakov and Ruvain, or on Ruvain's heirs and Ruvain. So this man, Ruvain, who's the son, he has debts. He owes his wife a ksuva, but he has no assets. He owes his wife a debt, he owes her a ksuva, or he owes creditors money. Now, if the father died first, then the wife could say that the son inherited the father, and therefore I'm collecting from my husband. But if the son died first, then the son wouldn't inherit the father in his grave. And so therefore is the whole question here. Who is going, what happens here? So there's a creditor, and there is a wife coming to collect her ksuva. Yorish Ha'av Omrim. Haben Meis Rishon. So those who want to inherit from the father, they want to get the estate. So they say the son died first, so he didn't inherit anything. Haben Meis Rishon, v'akach Meis Av. Then the father died, and so therefore we're entitled to collect the estate of the father, and Bal Yachovom, also the creditors say Ha'av Meis Rishon. And the creditors also say the father died first, and so the son, and then the son died afterwards. So the son inherited from the father, so we could collect our debts from him. So how do we deal in this case? Beis Shammai says Yachoku. Beis Shammai says you split it. As the Gemara in Yevamos explains, or Rashbam says that even though the heirs of the father, because since the heirs of the father are for sure going to inherit this money, and the creditor is a doubt, so you might think that it's a doubt against a doubt. Nevertheless, Beis Shammai is in the position that this contract that's ready to be collected, it's as though it's collected. So therefore, both are considered like they have certainty there. Whereas Beis Hillel says nechasim b'chazkasan, that the assets remain in their chazaka, meaning to say the heirs of the father, because they're for sure going to inherit either from Jacob or from Ruvain, and so therefore it's like they're muchzak. But whereas the son is just a suffix, and the creditor therefore is a doubt, and so the doubt cannot take it out of the certainty. So that's a dispute. So the Gemara is going to come back to this Mishnah, but first it's going to raise a different question. Tanan Asam, we learned in the Mishnah we learned this earlier. Hamal v'es chavero b'shtar, somebody who lends his friend money with a contract, gova minachasim mishubadim. So a person who lends his friend a contract, if he lends his friend money and he does it on a contract, so it's a written note, then he can collect even from encumbered property, from property that the borrower had at the time of the loan. But if he does it al yidei edim, but if it's just an oral loan through witnesses, then we've studied this many times. He can only collect from the free and clear property, the property that the borrower has at the time he comes to collect the loan. So by Shmuel, Shmuel now asks the question: what about if he says the ikni? Let's say he puts in the contract, I want to collect not only from the property that you have now, but also from anything that you will buy. I'm putting a lien on all your future purchases. So now the question, the ikni, on those questions, on those cases, vikana, and then the borrower goes and buys something. Mahu, would we say under those circumstances he can acquire it? So is there a lien on those properties? So the Gemara says, Aliba the Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, who says, Adam machna davar shalabo moti bayocha. According to Rabbi Meir, who says you can certainly acquire something that's not yet in existence. Well, then it's not a question. The vadai for sure, this type of transaction works, and the lender has a lien on the borrower's property. So under those circumstances, it's only a question on the Rabbanan, who say in general, ain't on the makna davar shel ba'olam. A person cannot acquire something that's not yet in existence. So in this case, would he be able to do it? According to the Rabbanan, do we say that a lien is different from a regular transaction? And so there, maybe the rabbis allowed this, perhaps because they want to encourage loans. And if the person really wants to have a strong security, you'll say not only on anything you buy or not anything you own, but even anything you purchase, I have a lien on it. Or else, maybe shibud, a lien is different than a regular kinyan. There are two possibilities. So that's what they're saying. So the Chachamim say, Adam makne davar shelo ba'olam. So who say so it's a question on the Rabbanan. So how do we answer this question? So Amar Rav Yosef Tashma. Rav Yosef says, I'll bring you a proof from the case in Ksubos. Says Rav Yosef, I'm going to bring you a proof from a Mishnah that we had in Ksubos. The case in Ksubos is as follows: that there is a person who the person in Ksuba, have a great Shabbos, boys. So the case in Ksubos is where there's Reuven comes along and says and lends Shimon $1 million, and then Shimon comes along and buys the property from Reuven for $1 million. So now Reuven pulls out his note and says, "You owe me $1 million." He said, "No." So Shimon says, "I paid it for you," and the proof that I paid it for you is because I subsequent to the note bought a property from you for $1 million. Now, if it's the case that I owed you the money, why would you give me the property? So clearly, I had already paid the loan. So Admon says, yeah, that's good logic, but the Chachamim say no, that's not a good argument because, as we say, the Chachamim Omer Zaya Pikeach. No, Reuven was smart. Shemachal lo asakarka. Why did he sell? Why was he smart in selling him the land? Because he could put a lien on the property. So he says, "I'm going to get $1 million in cash now, and I still own the loan. I still own the property. I still have a secure loan because now I have a lien on it." So and so this proves that he has a lien even on future properties that the buyer will purchase, because this was obviously not owned, that the borrower will purchase, because this was obviously not owned by the borrower at the time of the loan. So, and that's the Chacham say it's okay. So Amalei Rav on Minei Kamris. No, that's not a good proof. You're trying to bring a proof from the fact that he has a lien on the property that the borrower currently has. Well, Minei, from what the borrower currently has, you could even take his coat off his back to collect the money that he owes you. Kikami where are we asking a question about? The Ikni Kanu Machar, the Ikni Kana Vahorish. We're only asking about a case where he says anything that I'll acquire, he acquires something and he sells it. Shimon acquired something and sold it to Levi. Now Reuven wants to come and collect it from Levi. Is that okay? Is that going to be allowed? Because it's no longer in the borrower's possession. So was there a lien on the property that he acquired after the loan and then sold or bequeathed? So I'm Rav Chana. So let's bring a proof, says Rav Chana, from our Mishnah. Because what does our Mishnah say? Toshma nafal abayis alav al aviv. I love al Morishav. I still have Ksuva Sisho Ubalchov. Yorshav Omrim Haben Meis Rishon, Vachak Meisav, Ubalchovos, Omrim Ma'av Meis Rishon. So again, what's this case? The case is the creditors want to say that the claim of the creditors is that the father died first, so the son inherited it, and now the son died and he left it to his heirs, and we want to collect it from the heirs. So isn't that the case of where the son acquired it after the note, and then he bequeathed it, and they want to collect it? So this proves that even in a case where Ikni Kana the Horish, that it's going to be able to be collected. So the Gemara says, but if you want to say you can't collect from it, what would it matter if the father dies first? The Ikniu, it's a case where he got the property subsequent to the borrowing. It shouldn't work. So we see here that there's a lien anyway on property that you get subsequent to the note. So Amar Rav Nachman, no, Rav Nachman says, Zira Chavrin Tirgama. Our colleague Zira explained this, that no, why do they want to get the money? Not because the heirs of the son are legally obligated to pay, but only because it's a mitzvah, not because it's a secure note that they have a lien on it, but because they're obligated by a moral obligation to pay the debts of their father, because the obligation to honor the father and mother extends beyond death. So it's not because it's a secured loan. Even if it was not secured, they would have to pay off the debts of their father. The Gemara says, Maskav Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, how can Rav Nachman explain this that way according to Zira? Because then if it's an unsecured loan, it's a milval peh, it's an oral loan. Shmuel himself would be of the position. Shmuel wouldn't say that they're collecting it because because it's just a mitzvah to pay off the debts of the father. When Shmuel's of the position, is basically you don't collect from the heirs. If you only have an obligation to pay off the secured loan, but not the unsecured loan. So therefore, When do we say that it's a mitzvah to pay off the debts of the loan? That's where it's a secure loan. It's a loan by a contract, but not by a case of an oral loan. So therefore, the Gemara says it must be that the only thing we could say, what would Shmuel say? Ella, says Rav Ashi, who is the one who taught our Mishnah, where it says that you can place a loan on the future property, a lien on the future property. That must be Rabbi Meir. That must be Rabbi Meir. It says a person can acquire something that's not yet in existence. But Shmuel's question was according to Chachamim, who say a person cannot yet acquire something yet in existence. Would it apply also by a loan, by a lien? So we haven't answered the question yet. So Amar Rav Yaakov Mina Harpekod, Mishmei de Ravina. So Rav Yaakov Mina Harpekod says the name of Ravina, Tashma. So we have the idea of Shtarechov HaMukdam and Psul and Vamuchar and Ksherin. So let's say you have a note. If you want to make it a Shtar Mukdam, what's a Shtar Mukdam? Let's say you're lending the money on Friday, November 29th. I'm lending you $1 million today, but I want to say, but really I'm saying I put down the date of November 28th. Well, that's going to be disqualified. Why is that disqualified? Because you're only borrowing the money today, but I'm putting on a lien on anything you borrowed yesterday, on anything that you owned yesterday. You could have sold the property to somebody yesterday, and all of a sudden I have a lien on that property, and I can go and seize it. So that's obviously disqualified. But if I put a date on it that I'm lending you the money, even though it's today, I say I'm lending it to you on Monday, December 2nd. Then we're going to say under those circumstances that's kosher, because now I'm saying that because we're saying that even though we're basically saying there's a lien on your property from this date, even though you're not getting the money till later. That's okay because I that's what the contract's saying. That's fine. So but if you want to be in the position that you cannot put a lien on future properties, mu'ucharin, I'm like Sharon. Well, then if it's a delayed note, why do we say under those circumstances that a note, which a post-dated note that you're only lending the money on, I'm saying I'm lending the money on Tuesday, even though I'm giving you the money now. Basically, I'm saying that the loan will take effect later than it's actually taking effect. But if we're going to say that you can't put a lien on future properties, I'm like Sharon, why would that be kosher? The Iknihu. This is going to be considered, isn't this law related to the law of Ikni, or whether or not you could put a lien on properties after the loan? Because let's say the loan in this case took place today, and between the time when the loan actually was written down in the note, it's let's say next week. And so therefore, maybe he's going to buy a property between now and then. And so since it says in the note that it was later, he's going to come and collect from those properties that he acquired subsequent to the actual loan. And so therefore, since it happened after the loan, then it's only going to take place if we say the law of Ikni. So if that's the case, we learn from here that the law of Ikni works. So that's what answers Shmuel's question. So the Gemara says, no, here too, we're going to say, why does it work on money? This is Rabbi Meir. This is the position of Rabbi Meir who says, Adam Machmir Davar Shelo Ba'olam. This is the position of Rabbi Meir who says that a person can acquire something that's not yet in existence. And so therefore, since he could, so for sure he could put a lien on those properties even though he doesn't have them yet. And so therefore the post-dated contract is going to be kosher. And so therefore he writes Ikni, and so he says anything that I'm going to acquire, there's a lien on it. But our question that Shmuel was asking was only according to Chachamim, would say Ein Adam Machmir Davar Shelo Ba'olam. So therefore the Gemara is going to try and answer this question from the following case, Tashma. So we learned in a brisa. The brisa says as following: L'shevach karkaos keitzad. So if a person is let's say Ruvain borrowed the money, and then so there's a lien on. So so Shimon lends Reuven $1 million, and he has a lien on his field, and Reuven goes along and sells his fields, and where there's a lien on them, and Shimon comes to collect the note, so he has to go to the fields and he gets them. But the Levi bought the fields, and Levi improved the fields. That's called shevach. He's allowed to take the improvements back. So shevach karkos ketzar. What does it mean that you don't collect? That he says so now Shimon so Levi wants to come back and collect the assets back from Reuven, but for the shevach that he can only collect from the free and clear, not from the encumbered property. So what does this mean? So let's say Shimon sold the field to his friend, Mishpicha. Or let's say Reuven sold the field to Levi, and Levi improved it. And so Shimon comes along, he's a creditor of a Tarfa, and he seizes back the field from Levi. Kishu Gove as Hakaren. So now Levi wants to come back and collect back the money back from Reuven. When he comes back to collect the principal, he collects that and he collects that from the lien property, from the encumbered property. That's Shevach, and the improvements, he collects that he only collects that from the free and clear property. Now, if you're going to be at the position, if you want to say that you can't put a lien on the property that is future acquisition, why couldn't the creditor in the first place collect the shevach? The shevach, why can Shimon collect the shevach from Levi? This was something there was clearly no lien on it. It came after the fact. And so how can any creditor seize back the shevach that the purchaser add onto the field? This was not there at the time of the loan. And so therefore, the only way you can put a lien on it is through the law of Ikni. So it must be that you can put a lien on future properties. So the Gemara says, no. Money, again, we have to say that this Mishnah in Gittin that says that the creditor can take the shevach, this must be Rabbi Meir, Damar Adam Makta Davar Shalom. Yeah, that he puts into the loan, I'm going to be able to seize the property with any improvements made. So Rabbi Meir will clearly say you could do it. And our question is according to the Rabbanan, who say Ein Adam Makta Davar Shalom. So the Gemara now says, Im Tim Tilomer Deikni Kano Mechar. If you want to be in the position that if you say I can acquire it and acquire it and it sells it, that if you do that, you don't have a lien on the future acquisitions. If you want to say that it doesn't work, that you can't put a lien on it, so clearly in that case, if you say that, then you can't put a lien on it. But let's say you say you can put a lien on the future acquisitions. So now we have another question. Let's say Reuven borrows money and he says, yeah, and I'm putting a lien on all my future acquisitions. He borrows from Shimon. Then Reuven, he needs to borrow more money. He goes to Levi and he says, guess what? I'm putting a lien on all my future acquisitions. So he has two liens. But then he goes ahead and he buys something. Now he buys a building. And so basically, if you say that there's a lien on that, what will be the law there? L'kaima mishtabed or Bava Basra? Who is there a lien on it to? Is there a lien on the first one or also on the second one? Obviously, the first one has a lien on it, but does the second one also get a lien on it, or did the first one get entirely the lien? So Rav Nachman Hamilsi by one v'shalchim, meaning to say, does the second one also have a lien? He came second in line. Today we would say he's second in line, but they're asking the question: is he second in line, or is he splitting it with the first person? So Rav Nachman Hamilsi by one. We had this question, and we asked them in Eretz Yisrael. V'shalchim misam Rishon Kana. It says no, the first one is the one who has the lien. Whereas Rav Huna Amar Yachloku. Rav Huna says they split it. They split it. They split the lien. They both have equal access. They're equally going to share it. And he says, Rabbi Avu says they both split it. Which is, to my mind, very unfair to the first guy. First guy thought he was first in line. He lent the money. The second guy should have known. So Amar Ravina, Madura Kama Ravashi. I mean, maybe they have a footnote there explaining what's the logic behind splitting it, but still, it seems to me unfair. Says Ravina Madura Kamad Ravashi Amarwan Rishon Kana. The first time Ravashi taught this, he says the first guy acquires the whole lien. Madura Basra Ravashi Amarwan Yachoku. He says they split it Vilchasa Yachoku, and that's the law that they split it. So Meisvei. So the Gemara challenges. How can we say that they split it? But we have a brisa in Bamatzia. It says L'shevach Karkos Ketzad. It says. How do they collect the shevach of the real estate? How do they collect the improvements? Somebody sold the field to his friend, vishbicha, and he improves it. And the creditor comes along and seizes the shevach. When the purchaser comes to collect the improvements, he collects the principal from the encumbered properties of the guy who sold it to him, and he collects the improvements from the free and clear assets. And if it's the case that is someone who borrowed money from two people and he writes then the first person who comes along to get it, i.e. the guy who lent him the money at the beginning, shouldn't be able to collect all the shevach. He should only be able to collect half of the shevach, because it's really the shevach is encumbered to both of them. Because since the seller also has basically is responsible to the purchaser, so they're both splitting it, like you said. Gemara says, yeah, that's what we mean. My gova nami de katani chatzi shevach. It means he only collects half the improvements. Wow, it's like a bombshell ruling. Also, I wanted to say that we see from here, now what does it mean that Ravina said that Ravashi, the first time he taught it kanen, the second time he said split it? So the Rashbam explains that Rav Ashi taught the Gemara for 60 years. The first 30 years he went through it, and then he went through it a second 30 years. So he changed his mind. So we see from here that it took them 30 years to finish the Shas, not just 7.5 like we do. All right, I'll take any questions about this beautiful Gemara. Any questions?